Okay, well, and like I said, I think I explained a little bit what the project's about, and I know that you, I read your pre-questionnaire, and you talked about the fact that you guys, your unit marched through and came through to Nordhausen toward the end of the war. And if you could tell me a little bit about how you came about being in the Army, and what you did before the Army, before the war.
Well, I was in the photographic business before the war. I worked for a company that finished photo finishers, big outfit here in Nashville, and then I got started off, shooting a few pictures once in a while, and that's when the bug bit me, and that's all I wanted to do. And I've got an incident here about Nordhausen, if I can find that thing.
So were you a photographer when you were in the Army, or?
Well, after the war was over, I didn't have enough points to come home. And luckily, in my records, I had that I was capable of doing that kind of thing, and I was called to division headquarters one day and made division photographer. So it was, if I had to stay over there another year or so, I was glad to get something I would enjoy doing. And I was issued a Jeep and a complete 4x5 speed graphic outfit, the whole works, and traveled all over Europe, well, Germany and Belgium and Holland, France.
That's great. How old were you when you came in the Army?
Oh, I think it was about 22. Let's see, 1941. No, I was 21. I went in 41 and got out in 45.
And what job did they give you initially? I see you were with the 32nd Armored Infantry Regiment.
That was 36 Armored Infantry. That was over there. I went overseas as a replacement. I spent most of the time in the Signal Corps in this country, doing radar work, which was highly classified at that time. And the Battle of the Bulge started over there, and they needed a lot of infantry replacements, so we got rushed off over there, and I was assigned to the 3rd Armored Division, 36th Armored Infantry Regiment. And luckily, the war ended in about 6 weeks, I guess, after I got over there. But that was enough of it. I didn't want no more of it.
What was the date that do you remember when you entered Nordhausen?
I've got that down here somewhere, but I can't put my finger on it. Oh, here it is, April 11th, 1945. The bombed out city of Nordhausen was the location of a concentration camp, a slave labor camp where hundreds of corpses lay everywhere side by side, some still living. When our tanks tore holes in the walls of the building, some of the poor devils come running out to meet us. We gave them some of the rations we had, and they ate the cigarettes like candy. We had to push on, but the infantry division that followed us gave the living medical attention, and I don't know what happened to the dead. The men in my outfit were so mad now that there was no way we could lose the war, and that was all that's the only thing. I made this from a little old pocket diary. And the next day we learned that President Roosevelt was dead. Just didn't tie in with this, of course. And that's really about all that I can add to this thing.
Do you remember the morning that you came into the camp?
Well, I don't remember whether it was morning or night, but we thought it was just another town. And of course, this camp was probably made out of rock or brick or something, so the tankers, being nosy as they were, they just thought they'd just bust a hole through that wall. And I guess all the German guards had heard this armored division coming, and they all left, because I don't remember ever seeing one of them. So we pushed a hole through that wall, and these poor devils just come running out that was able to, and they were just skeletons, just skin and bones.
What did you know about the camp when you first saw it? I mean, when you
I
saw
didn't know
fence,
nothing.
Did you know what it was?
I had no idea, and like I told someone, I never heard of the word Holocaust until, gosh, years and years after the war was over. We thought they were just Russians and displaced persons, DPs that we call them. They were used. There was a rocket factory in that little old town, and we thought they were just used as slave laborers. And when we went on, we just forgot all about it, you know.
So your unit was driving by and you saw the walled compound, and you decided to go ahead, and the tankers decided to poke a hole in it, crash in, and go in and see what's inside. And then you opened it up, and a lot of people came out.
Yeah.
Can you tell me how you felt when you saw it?
Well, it was kind of horrible. You know, we wasn't too well fed ourselves, because we didn't have too good of rations until we usually just found rations in homes to eat, you know. But there were these poor devils. They were starving to death, and we usually the tankers carried a lot of cigarettes and stuff inside and their tanks, and us infantry guys, we rode on the back of the tanks, you know. But it was, even though it was a long time ago, I can remember. I don't lay awake at night thinking about it, but I can remember it. That's been over 50 years ago.
So you gave out the cigarettes to them, and you said they ate the
Oh, they
cigarettes?
just ate them like candy. I don't know whether they didn't know what they were or whether, I just don't know, don't remember.
How long did you stay in the camp overall?
Oh, not long. An armored division, they just keep on moving all the time. It just, if you stop somewhere too long, you get hit by, you know, shells. But as far as the Holocaust was concerned, I don't remember ever even hearing anything about it until a long time after the war was over. And you know, a lot of people don't think there ever was such a thing. At the time, if they'd have told me that's what that was, I don't know whether I'd have believed it or not, because I would have thought those German civilians would have had more sense than to let something like that take place around there. But the other camps, I'm sure, were a lot worse than Nordhaus, and I think it was one of the smallest ones.
How long after the war was it that you figured out, or that you were told that was a Jewish camp?
I don't remember.
So it was years afterwards. I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, my daughter works at the public library, and she run across that Nordhausen somewhere in the internet, and looked it up, and you know, found out that it was one of those atrocity camps. And well, then I told her, I said, shoot, I've been there. I was right there. And I just didn't connect it with anything like a Holocaust, but I'm sure there was one.
Where did you go after the camp? Where did your unit press on to?
I don't really remember. We were headed towards Berlin, and I don't remember the next town. Our division commander, who incidentally was Jewish, Maurice Rose, a major general, was killed, one of the few high-ranking general officers that was killed during World War II. He was killed between there and Paderborn, but I don't remember how far that was.
Did you have people that could speak to the prisoners who were open? Did you have people who could interpret or
I just don't remember.
Just a lot of people out there.
like I said, we just considered them a bunch of DPs, and
I see here you said that you gave them what rations you had available to share with them, and then pressed on. Now, I noticed in here, I was reading it, that you had said that when did you share this with your wife and your daughter and your family? What had happened?
well, letters were censored during World War II. You couldn't, nowadays you can be on television in Iraq and your wife can be watching it at home, but we couldn't even write a letter home, tell anything. We just say hello and goodbye or something. And so I'm sure it was a long time after the war. After they stopped censorship, it was after the war was over. And of course, I didn't make too much out of this because I didn't think it was too much to it, not knowing that there was a Holocaust, you see.
In your words here, you said, I told my wife and daughter about my experience. I hope they believed me. I mean, what at that time made you feel like that they might not have believed what you were telling them? Or?
Well, it's hard for an individual to believe that you saw something like that, I can't recall ever seeing, unless it was on public television, any pictures similar to those little old pictures laying there. I don't remember ever seeing anything like that. It's just hard for people to believe. Even Hussein was supposed to have killed and murdered a lot of people, but nothing of that scale.
And you got out of the military in what year?
45.
45.
Mm-hmm.
When you moved back to Tennessee?
Yes, yeah.
Were you married before the war?
Yeah, I was married before the war. And these boys that go over there now for a couple of months and their wives are screaming. They haven't seen their husband in 2 months. My wife didn't see me for 2.5 years.
Yeah. It's a different time.
Different time.
Definitely. And you went into the news business, the news photography business then?
Mm-hmm.
30 years?
Went to work for the old Nashville Banner. Had a good time.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Do you think much about the war now?
No, I don't think too much about it. I never would have had to gone over there if it hadn't have been for the Battle of the Bulge. My wife and I were in Florida, southeast Florida, way on down close to Miami, and we were just having a ball. I never will forget the day when I come in and told her, I said, I've been transferred to the infantry, we got to go home. Mm-hmm. And she like to died. But we were young, and you can take a lot when you're young,
That's right. It was very true. Have you spoke to other groups about your experiences in the camp?
No.
The camp?
Mm-hmm.
Haven't talked to it.
No, this is really the first time it's been brought up. I made this little old record here of what little I did during the war, and just to give my daughter, and I kept a copy of it for myself.
Is there anything you'd like to add that I haven't brought up?
You about covered it. You made it. You got more out of me than I thought you would.
Don, do you have any questions?
When you think about that day, especially in the liberation of the camp itself, what do you think you remember the most?
Well, I don't know. It was just, we were in such a hurry. We didn't really spend too much time there, as I remember, just long enough to see what was going on, which was long enough. And it was just a horrible sight.
What do you say to the people who said it didn't happen?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of people in this country that don't believe that ever happened, but I don't see hardly how they can say that because it's just too much proof. Don't you really have some living survivors of the thing? Mm-hmm. Have you interviewed any of those out here? You have?
Sure have.
And do you know every one of them said their greatest day of joy was the day you guys got there?
Oh, I'm sure it was.
One of them calls it his second birthday. Because
I'm
it
sure it was. I
his
know
favorite.
how I would have felt probably if I'd have been in
How
there.
do you feel about that, though? When they look
Well,
to you, they
it was
look
just
to
the
you
war
60
was
years
going
later.
on, and it was just something that happened it was just another day in your diary, you might say.
They look to you almost 60 years later as the greatest moment of their life when you came in.
Yeah.
And 60 years later, they still remember that. How does that make you feel?
Well, it makes you feel pretty good.
For you, it was another day in the office.
Yeah. Well, it was, I'm sure it was another a day in their life, and the ones that were still living. Which was the biggest, the Auschwitz?
Auschwitz and Dachau were the biggest.
Dachau.
Dachau was liberated by the Americans. Auschwitz was liberated by the Soviets. So
Yeah. I guess Dachau was liberated by, was it George Patton?
yeah, in the middle of April.
And he called the higher officers in there to look at it, and the news media, and because he knew nobody would believe him, probably.
In Dachau, they allowed some of the healthier inmates to kill the guards as a form of retribution.
Yeah,
Did you
I remember
experience
seeing,
anything
no,
like
I
that?
saw a picture one time where it showed all the German officers that were guards at this place. They lined them up out there against the wall outside and just shot every one of them. So I don't know whether it was at Dachau or Auschwitz.
Dachau, they allowed the inmates to do it.
But I don't remember seeing a German at,
In Nordhausen.
because I'm sure we'd have fought it out with them because, you know, the war was still going on. And well, it was a terrible experience, but I wouldn't take $1 million for it.
What do you want people to remember most about it?
Well, I just think that there will be another war fought like World War II. And of course, people thought about World War I the same way, and it's just a high-tech war now. There's no such thing as a single-action, bolt-action rifle, or M1 Garand. It's all, they don't even have Tommy guns anymore, I don't guess, do they? They got those AK, what,
The M16s?
M16s and bazookas. We used to have a bazooka. That thing would knock out a tank. It just shot from your shoulder, you know. But it's all high-tech. It was, like I say, a wonderful experience, but I wouldn't want to go through it again, but I wouldn't take $1 million for it. Although I contributed very little, because if it hadn't been for the Battle of the Bulge, I never would have had to gone over.
Still very important.
Yeah. And seeing that Battle of the Bulge on television, if the Germans had run out of gasoline, we might not have won that war. I mean, they had a brigade of Tiger tanks, and they crushed everything they come to.
Rob, do you have anything?
Did you have a camera with you?
No. We went through some of the cities in Germany where the best photographic equipment in the world was made. And of course, at the time, most of them were making binoculars and bomb sights, but every high-ranking German officer you come across, he usually had a Leica around his neck, contacts, Zeiss, Icon camera. But for some reason or other, I never did get a hold of one of them. Everybody got a hold of them before I did. But that was before the Japanese cameras kind of took over.
When, in your career as a photojournalist, do you ever have to photograph grisly scenes?
Oh yeah, everything you can think of. It just barring, I mean, everything you can possibly think of, we shot pictures of it. And if it was too bad, then of course the paper wouldn't publish them if it was too horrible. But usually you just done it for record anyway, so you'd have something to brag about the next day, you know.
There were a lot of photographs taken in the camps, and I don't know if they were by Americans or Germans, and sometimes they even traded
Yeah.
those photographs. They were very popular to have them.
I just imagine that the rear echelon troops that come in there after we moved on out, well, I just imagine they made a lot of pictures of that stuff. I don't know whatever, I don't,
Germans made photographs.
oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure they made photographs of made them two little old things there. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not positive, but somebody,
How did you get those?
I just found them. And at night, you know, tanks back then couldn't move at night. They didn't have no way of seeing. And at night, we'd just stop in any place and go in a house, spend the night, or just sleep out on the ground somewhere. But we were in a house when I found those little things, which don't show you much, but.
Oh, they show you plenty.
And then they're 50 years old, so they've turned a little color since I found them.
Robert, thank you so much. Thank you for.
Well, if I gotta go, my wife's gonna spin me to death if I don't hurry up and get it.
One more thing, though.